Welcome to Thelma FM's Life Story podcasts. This is part one of a two-part interview with John Thomson, who volunteers in the Wee Museum of Memory, Ocean Terminal. In this episode, we hear about John's childhood, growing up in the Royston Mains area of Edinburgh, and about his working life up until the end of his 30 years in the brewery. He says his childhood was like many others, but not many people had an illegal bookie for a grandfather, a granny who took you out collecting cinders on the rail tracks, or uncles who took you out on deliveries on their horse and cart. Once he left Ainslie Park School at the age of 15, his varied working life began. It was a time when jobs were plentiful. If you didn't like a job, you left and got another one. We hear about working in Mitchell's sawmill, the Co-op, Fag Barings, Bon 9, to name but a few. John had 10 jobs before starting work at the brewery. We hear of the long hours worked there, but also of the fun and tricks he and his workmates played on each other. So sit back and enjoy.
Okay, John, so where were you born?
I was born in New Haven, but I only stayed there for a couple of years and then moved up to Royston Mains. So I spent most of my childhood plus growing up in Royston Mains.
Oh, right, right. So whereabouts in New Haven were you?
New Lane.
Oh, and were you born at home or hospital?
Hospital, Western General.
And what year was that?
1947.
There we go. You're just a youngster, really.
2 years after the war.
And what did you knew your grandparents?
Yep, both sets of grandparents. My granddad on my mother's side, he was a butcher. My grandma, well, she was, I think for want of a better word, a housewife. You know?
Yeah.
And the other side, my granddad was an illegal bookie.
Oh, fantastic.
And my grandmum on that side, she liked to drink, shall we say.
So was that your father's side?
My father's side, yeah. She liked nothing's changed. She liked a wee drink, you know. She used to take me down at Granton Square there. That used to be the goods yard for the trains. And she used to always take me down there with an old pram like the big ones that we have outside. And we would go up the tracks and she'd be looking for the cinders, you know, from the trains, you know. Yeah. But she always had a wee quarter bottle in her pocket, you know.
So that obviously stuck with you as a child, even.
And the same with my dad. My dad's dad, well, my granddad, he was a bookie, a legal bookie. But my dad was a runner, so he used to take me with him, you know, small, so nobody would ask questions. So he would take me down to, at the side of the Anchor Inn, there's a wee lane.
Yeah.
And he would take me down the lane, and the people from the wireworks would come to put their bets on, including the police.
No, really?
And then he would move off up to just outside. It was Bruce Peebles then. So one day would be the Anchor for the wireworks, and the next day or 2 days after that would be up Bruce Peebles for the workers in Bruce Peebles.
And you were there as a stooge?
Well, I was, yeah, I suppose so, you know. They see him stand about with a child, you know, and nobody would, you know.
So explain to us a bit what a bookie's runner did, because some people won't realise
what
this was.
From what I can make out, my granddad was the main man. So my dad was a runner, so he would take the bets and go back to my granddad, and he would put them all on, and then he would pay the winners through my dad.
Right. You
know, like if somebody won in Parsons People, Granddad would give them the money, and they'd go up to Parsons People, stand outside, or the wireworks, and pay the man, you know.
So was that his main business?
That was my dad's for a while, and then he ended up working in the wireworks.
Oh. Did you? Well, you just said that the police used to do a bet as well.
They used to come in and put a wee bet on, you know.
So what would this been like? Mid-50s?
54, I think.
Oh, right.
55, round about that.
So was there lots of brothers and sisters? Or?
I had two brothers, well, three brothers, but one died in childbirth. So two brothers and two sisters and myself, and I was the oldest. But then when we did this sort of thing, there was only me and my sister.
Right.
but then the family got bigger as time went on.
Yeah.
Always, my granny was always up something. She's wheeling and dealing. And
Was she?
Not my granny Gladstone. She was a proper housewife, if you like.
Right, okay.
But my granny Thomson, she was always up to something.
Was she?
Yeah. And as we got older, there's things that my dad liked to drink. And I used to go. I'd be about 7, maybe 8. And on a Friday night, by this time, of course, he was working in the wireworks. And on a Friday night, I would go down to the Anchor Inn and ask somebody to go in and get my dad. And he would come out and give me what was left of, or what he felt like giving me to take up for my mum. In that deal there was 3 of us, was go and get the money for your dad and go to the Jubilee and get a couple of bags of chips for your tea. So that was it. So, and then there was the thing, like when the rent men used to come to your door, and it was a bit like handicap, rent spent. If Mum didn't have the money, or there wasn't enough money for food and rent, she would put all the lights out in the house and we'd have to sit quietly while the man was knocking on the door, And then they also had things like, in our house, we didn't have any carpets.
Right.
It was all lino. Every now and again, you'll see a big patch out the lino. That was for the soles of your shoes, because you had holes in the soles of your shoes, and Mum used to cut the shape of your shoe out the lino and put it inside. Things like that. And lots of things like, there was things like what they call a Parker's Menage. Now you would get, I can't remember how it worked. I think you got like a ticket and you went up to Parker's and you bought stuff. But you had to pay it up, like paying up, live now, pay later, if you like. And Mum would go up to Parker's and she would buy, just say for example, sheets and woolen blankets. She would keep holding them for a couple of days, and if money got a bit tight, she would either go on her own or take me with her to the pawn in West Bowling Green Street, put in the sheets and blankets, get some money to feed or pay bills or whatever it was, and then come the time for redeeming to get your things back, she never got them back. She sold the ticket on to somebody just for the money. So they would, and this went on and on and on with Park. And was also the Provy man, where you got a Provy check, and that was the same thing. Oh, she needed food, then she sold whatever she had bought, because everything she got from the Provy check ended up in the pawn, but it was never redeemed. It was always, this is how she saw how to make things work.
And that's just a way of life.
That's just a way of life. That was with us. That was it. Sometimes if you were lucky, well, not lucky, I wouldn't say lucky, there was only things in the house for tea like porridge. So you get porridge for your tea, or you get a sugar and butter piece. That was it. It's just the way. It was to do with my dad, because his motto was work hard, play hard. But I think he forgot for a wee while that he had a family. So it was all. If there was no money, that's what you got for your tea: a plate of porridge, or a sugar, and it wasn't even butter; it was eco margarine.
Oh God! Yes, yeah.
So that's just the way things were.
Yeah.
And then we moved from one house in Royston up to another house because the family got bigger. And there was four in a block in the stair. And next door to us there was, I don't think you can call them gypsies. They called them hawkers.
Right, okay.
It was a family next door. And there's quite a lot of them in this 2-bedroom house. But they had no electric or gas. It was candles, and they cooked all their tea on the fire. God. In pots, like old cauldron style pots. Yeah. But what they used to do is, there was a place, it's still there, the crew area, but we called it the poshes, because we thought all these people had bought these houses, but we didn't realise it was the same as the council. They were rented, but we thought, So the hawkers would go on, I think it was twice a week, they had the buckets getting emptied. So they would go up and they would rate the buckets, and they would get things like school uniforms, because these people just put them in the bucket. Yeah. So they would bring stuff home, they would wash them all and press them all, and then go around the door selling them. So
really
more often than not, I'd have somebody else's school uniform on. that came out of the bucket.
I mean, that was a way of life. Were you
That was
aware of
Well, yeah,
where
because
you were living?
we were not the only family. There was lots of families like that. Lots of families where the father thought, I've got the right to go to the pub on Friday and come home when I want. There was lots of people like that. And then there was things like borrowing cups of sugar or a half pint of milk or a piece of margarine or some bread. I mean, that went on all the time when I was young. But you just accepted it because you didn't know any better.
So basically, your mother was running the house on a shoestring.
Yeah. We seem to manage well. I'm still here anyway. But unfortunately, my mum died when she was 38. I was 19. So by this time, of course, there was the whole family. The 5 of us, of course, one didn't survive.
Yeah.
And 3 of us were okay to be. Well, my sister had met this guy who was a soldier. She got married at 16. Then there was me at 19. And then my other brother, he was 14, and he was friendly with, well, just say his best friend. So they sort of adopted him, if you like, to stop him going into care.
Right.
But my other brother and sister, they went into care because they were younger. And I never ever saw them again.
No.
So that's over 50 years.
You've never any...
Never saw them again.
And you don't know which care home they went to,
Well,
presumably.
yes, it was Red Hall
Right.
Children's Home up at Red Hall,
Yeah,
Longstone.
yeah.
But then they disappeared off the face of the earth, so I don't know what's happened.
bizarre.
We've tried in the past, over the years, my sister, who I'm still friendly, my sister, who I'm in touch with, we've tried the Red Cross, we've tried Somerset House, we've tried this, that, and the next thing.
It's extraordinary.
But I do know that my younger brother was involved in drugs. I knew that, so that could be his demise. My sister, I believe that she got pregnant at 15, and then we never saw them again. So that's just the way things are. So there's still me and my sister.
Right. Yeah. God, how
So we
strange.
keep in touch.
Yeah. So, and school? Where did you go to school?
I went to Royston Primary, which is in Boswell Parkway, which is now an old folks' home. And then Ainslie Park, which is now blocks of flats.
And did you enjoy school?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't at my secondary school long
Right. Okay.
because I got knocked down by a bus and I was in the hospital, in the Princess Margaret Rose Hospital, 10.5 months. I fractured my femur and my knee and all that kind of thing. So I would say secondary school, maybe a year and a half. So I was as thick when I went there and I was thick when I left.
So did you leave at
15.
15?
First job, you know yourself, well, you're a wee bit younger than me, but in the 60s, if you started a job in the morning and didn't like it, you could get another one by lunchtime. So I started a job at Mitchell Sawmill, which was at the bottom of Balfour Street. So I started on the Monday and I got to the Thursday and I thought, I've had enough of this. So I went away for my lunch and I never went back. I walked down the road and I went into still there, but it's no longer the Co-op, a branch of Leith Provy. It was in Stead's Place, which is part of Leith Walk, next door to the Fifey's Banana Yard.
Yeah.
So I went in there and I asked about jobs and they sent me to Bangor Road, which was the head place. So I went in there and guy says to me, "You working just now?" I said, "Well, no." Well, I wasn't. So this was a Thursday, I think, and he said, "Well, could you start on Monday?" So I said, "What will I be doing?" "Oh, you'll be weighing up like the old brown bags, making up sugar and all that kind of stuff." So I went there on the Monday, stuck that for about 2 weeks, and I thought, "Oh, I sod this." So they sent me to a branch by this time. In fact, they sent me to the branch where I originally went to ask about it, and that was in Stead's Place.
Right.
And I got a job as a message boy, but I couldn't ride a bike. So I used to have to push the bike everywhere till I actually learned to cycle it. Once I'd deliver my groceries, I'd maybe be around about Leith Link, so I'd go down there and try and ride the bike, and I fell off it more times than not. But I managed eventually to master it. So I thought, don't like it here anymore. So there was a German company who had opened a sort of mini warehouse, if you like, in Lawrence Street. It was called FAG, F-A-G Bearings. It was all ball bearings and engineering pieces. So I was passing one day after I delivered something to somebody in Homaya Street, and I thought, I want to pop in here because I had a wee notice in the window. Assistant wanted. So I went in and I said to the guy, what kind of job is it? He says, well, I see you riding a bike. He says, be the same here, he says, but you'd be cycling around to engineering works and stuff like that and dropping off ball bearings and parts. So I went back to the co-op. I says to the guy, right, I'm leaving. Cheers. And I started in fag the next again day.
No. So when you were walking out of these jobs, you got some sort of pay. Did you go
You
back
got
to
your
get paid?
whatever. If you were due 2 days' pay, you got
Right.
due. But the Mitchell sawmill, it was a week's line time, so you got your week's money
Oh, okay.
when you left.
Oh, right.
So I left the fag after about 4 months.
Right.
I ended up working, because my cousin by this time was working in Smithy Baker's at Hawk Hill. So he says, it's a great job, but he didn't really tell me you had to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Anyway, I got the job in Smithy Baker's. Stuck that for maybe about a year. By this time I'd be coming up for nearly 17. I stuck it for about a year and then I thought, so I was coming down Leith and I popped into Mitchell Street. It was William Muir Bond 9. So I went in there and I just said to the guy, I says, I'm looking for a job. What kind of job? I says, anything. So he says, if you go along to Dock Place, that's the transport department. He says, we're looking for what they call the second man.
Oh, all right.
Right, so I went along and spoke to the boss. And he says, are you working just now? I says, no. He says, would you be willing to start tomorrow? I says, aye, no problem. So got this job and I stuck it well. And then they put me through my test, paid for all the lessons, got my driving licence, then I left.
So what was the second man job then? Was that
Just to help, delivering whisky, casks and cases to different places all over Scotland. You know.
God, right.
Mainly Glasgow and Ayrshire.
Right.
But, we went everywhere.
Well, that was all right.
It was a good job. And then it was funny when I got my own, what they call, you get your own run.
Right.
By this time, William Muir was taking on various contracts to deliver for, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a courier kind
Yeah, like now.
Yeah.
Logistics.
Right.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I got my own van. I thought, this is great. So, big van, William Muir, Bond 9, whisky, cask and everything on it. The boss says to me, right, he says, you'll be going down the borders today. You'll be doing all the co-ops. He says, co-ops? He says, aye. So he says, you'll be delivering Carnation milk. That's what I was doing.
Right.
Delivering cases of Carnation milk to all the co-ops, doing the Hoyek and Lily's Leaf and all these. I stuck that for a while. But then they got a new boss and I kind of fell out with him. And then I thought, bugger this. So I came along here, at Henry Rob's. And I spoke to the guy and he says, well, we're looking for a plumber's mate. He says, would you do that? I said, aye. So then here, Henry Rob's.
So what age were you by this time?
20.
So you must have had about 6, 7 jobs?
About 10 jobs.
Oh, 10 jobs. 20. Okay, right, fair enough.
So I stuck Rob's for a wee while and I got fed up with that because being a plumber's mate, you were down in the double bottoms and there was no safety. And you were up to they gave you Wellingtons and waders and that, and you were up to your eyes in cold water and that. So I left there, and after that I ended up working for Carney and Crones along at West Shore Road. They had a factory where they froze all the fish, but when you weren't doing the fish, you were landing the trawlers.
Wow.
So what they did was they gave you so much on top of your wages for landing the trawlers, but they took enough back off you to cover the fact that you're away from the factory. So at the end of the day, you were still better off because you had your full week's wages from the factory. And then if you got maybe, say, 3 landings a week, by that time there were £3 a landing, so you got an extra £9 a week. Yeah?
Well, that wasn't too bad. And tell us a little bit about the landing. I mean, that would be very physical kind of...
Well, very physical. There would be 4 men down the hold. And in that time, not like now, where it's a couple of 100 boxes of fish, if you like. Then it would be 1,200 boxes of fish down that hold. And 4 of you had to put them on the sling so that the crane could take them up.
My goodness.
So if you did 3 of them a week, sometimes you got 2 a day. you were loaded at the end of the week. Oh, loads of money, you know. I was actually making more than my dad.
Wow.
So that kind of helped things along
Yeah.
with my mum, you know.
Yeah. And how was your relationship with your dad by this time?
Not great. It wasn't great anyway. He
No,
didn't
no.
like me and I didn't like him.
Is that right?
Simple as that.
Was that the whole cut all through your
he
childhood?
just didn't like me. My dad should never have got married.
No.
Or should never have had children. Because he wasn't interested. He did nothing with us.
No.
No, anything that was done. We didn't have holidays because we couldn't afford it. What we had was whole family, granny, granddad, two grannies, two granddads, uncles and aunts, down to Cramond.
Right.
And that was your holiday. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So, but my dad was never interested. He was there, but you could see that he didn't want to be there. You know, just by looking at him, you knew that he wasn't interested. Both my uncles took more interest in me
And he did.
than he did. You know, both my uncles, as I said before, they both, at one time, both worked for St Cuthbert's. And it was delivering the milk, obviously. One of my uncles was Marchmont with a horse and cart. And my other uncle was Trinity, where I live now, with a horse and cart. So I'd be about 10, 11. And I used to go, he called it my Saturday job. So I would go with the one that did Trinity with a horse and cart. And it was great, just walking up and down the Edinburgh Road, feeding the horse and dropping off milk. And you get your wee tips at Christmas, you know.
Cool.
It's great. Yeah. In fact, the house that my sister-in-law lives in now, number 5 near the road, this woman that used to live in there, every Christmas, she used to give me 5 shillings. And that was a lot of money. So I said that to Val. I remember the woman that lived in this house, you know.
Isn't that bizarre?
But there was different things. And then, of course, they both left. And one of my uncles worked in St Cuthbert's when Sean Connery. And then through time, they both left. And they both had jobs where they would be drivers, you know, like delivery drivers.
Yeah.
So both of them ended up in Masons and Bakers because he had 2 mobile shops, and they both.
Oh, they did.
Well, one drove one drove the other.
Right.
So again, I used to go with one of my uncles on a Saturday, and at the end of the night, you never got money. You got cuttings off the vanilla cakes. Stuff like that. That was your wages, you know. Or if there was any pies left, you got a couple of pies. You know?
Well, I'm sure that was very useful.
So that was just the way things were. And as I say, I managed to get a good job. I was in the brewery for 30 years. You know.
Yeah. Let's get you back to though. You were still at the fish.
Yeah. And as I say, doing the landings, and then I was in the pub, the tap, because we did the landing, and we used to get what they called a pockle.
Right.
And you would sell it in the tap, or you would give a couple of pints for it. It was the same. I worked when I left there. I went to work in Robert Crone's, which was down here. Oh, sorry, previous to that, I left Carney and Crone's, and I got a job with Polar Foods, delivering and filleting. Unfortunately, I didn't get on with the boss. So I left there and I went back to Carney and Crone's, and then I stayed there for another year. Then they were closing down their processing factory.
No.
So I ended up with Robert Crone's at New Haven.
Right.
So I worked there for a wee while.
Did they smoke fish then?
Yeah, that was my job, smoking the kippers.
Was it?
Aye. So we did all sorts of work there, and I left there. Where did I go after that? Met up with this girl who used to live in Goldbridge. I was between jobs, shall we say, at the time. And her dad was something to do with the Lady Victoria pits.
Oh, yeah.
She wanted me to go down the pit. And I said, no, I'm not going down the pits.
No.
So anyway, that relationship didn't last very long. So I came back into town, and I ended up working for a company called Mitchell Construction. They were the ones that widened the road at New Haven. They took away Barney Battles.
Oh, right.
They were the ones that did that. I worked there, finished there, went to Miller's, and they were building Telford College, the old one.
Right.
So I worked there, left there, went to another builder called Charles Macklin.
Right.
They were down Ballantine Road. Just a wee outfit. But then I worked with a company called Holland Taws in the Victoria Hospital at Comley Bank.
Right. So what were you doing on the building site?
Just labouring.
Labouring.
And
Right.
then I left there. They had they were called Holland Taws, but they also had a branch called Halls.
Right.
And they were building it's still there. If you see, but the gasworks is all gone now.
Yeah.
But the big tank that's still there,
Yeah.
they were building that at the time.
Oh, wow.
So I worked there. Tracks. So I've been around.
A lot of physical work, that. A lot of physical work.
So I eventually ended up in the brewery. That was it. What happened with that job was I was working for a removal company called Scott Pack. And they were international removal. We would go to somebody's house, pack everything up, and then it would go in a container to America or Africa or wherever they wanted to go. So I'd met Linda by this time, and she wasn't very happy about this because I was knocking my pan in for I was getting about 18 quid a week, and I was working hard. So she was adamant that I wanted to go. She wanted me to learn a trade. I said, but Linda, I'm 20-something, I can't remember what age I was, 24. She said, no, you could go on one of these government schemes. And that was at the place at West Grant Road.
Oh, I know. Still there, I think, isn't it?
So, but that's now the museum.
Oh, right. Oh, right.
Stop
It's
for
there.
anyway, I went along and they took me on as a turner. But it wasn't for me.
No.
I tried it for about 4 or 5 months. I think it was a 2 or a 3 year thing.
No.
And I tried it and I thought, nah, this isn't for me. So I ended up being out of work for a wee while, not long. And I was just up Fountain Bridge one day and I thought, well, we'll look in the brewery. So I popped in and the guy says to me, are you working just now? I said, no. He says, well, go down to Holloway's and see. The guy's name is Jimmy Telfer. And he gave me a wee letter to go down. So this would be a Thursday. And I went down and I never even got an interview. I just went in the door and the guy says, name, blah, blah. And he looked at the letter and says, you working just now? I says, no. Can you drive a forklift? Yes. Right, I'll see you on Monday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll be back shift that week. And that was it.
See, people now will not understand the concept of being able to do that with a job. Just
No,
walk in.
I mean, I was there for 30 years.
I bet there's a few stories at the
Well,
brewery.
there's a few stories, but I'm not going to commit myself.
Is there any ones you can tell us about?
Well, there was, we worked 12-hour shifts on a Saturday night.
Right.
And most of the Saturday night work was done by a machine, cleaning everything.
Right,
So we would go to the pub or the tartan club for your official break.
Of course, yeah.
We were in there was a pub down the road called the Grove Bar, and we went in there one night, and there was a transvestite in the pub, and beautiful, you know. So this guy that was on the shift, no names, shall I mention, in case he's listening, but he'll know anyway. He was desperate to get off with this.
Yes.
And we kept saying to him, Alan, that's a man. Nah, rubbish. So yeah, eventually he said, cover for me. So he went away, and I will not tell you what I said when he came back. But I says, well, you were warned, Alan. You know. And we used to play a lot of tricks on each other, you know.
Yeah.
Like, when we were on night shift, we would go into the brew house and capture a couple of pigeons and put them in the day shift's locker. So when they opened the locker, the pigeons would fly out. Things like that, and we would, the things that we got up to, we would, well, one guy, his name, Lenny, he probably won't know, he used to love pie and mince pies. So we were on night shift one night. So Alec was a right prankster, he was for Glasgow. Came in and he took the tops off the pies, and you know these pepper shakers you get.
Oh, yeah.
One in each pie, and then put the tops back on. Ooh. So Lenny's come in, he's starving, and he's face was scarlet. He says, I'll need to tell my wife Kathy to stop buying any curry pies. But we did think like that. If somebody had a chicken breast or a leg, you would eat the meat and just leave the leg in the fridge or in the cooker or whatever. And stapling, it was wooden lockers, stapling overalls to lockers. We did stupid things, you know.
So what was your actual
and putting
job?
Senecot in the beer.
Oh, you know. No. Because
My actual job was I had 3 titles.
Right.
I was a FMV operator, fermentation maturation operator.
Oh, right, okay.
A brew house operator, and what was the other one? Maturation operator. So we went through the stages. You would start off at the beginning, you'd be in the copper, you'd be making the beer, well, boiling it up, and then be transferring it over to be fermented. Then you would do the additives every 4 hours. You check the gravity. When it was right for the coolant to go on, you would put the coolant on, all that kind of thing. And then if it was ready to be transferred to the maturation vessels, you would transfer it.
And now, you know, people kind of think of breweries as being a sort of nice, crafty... This was industrial.
Well, now they are. But
Right.
I was laughing the other day there. We were watching a programme on TV and it was about a wee microbrewery.
Right.
And the guy was summing himself up. And he said, he says, we do about 70 or 80 barrels a week. I says to Linda, 70 or 80? I says, we pop more on the floor. I says, we used to do at the height 50,000 barrels a week. 50,000 barrels a week. And the high-speed the can line was capable of 1,800 cans a minute, filling them. At its peak, it was normally 1,300 or 1,400 a minute. But if they needed it to go faster, you know.
And what were you brewing there? What were you making?
Well, McEwen's export, 70 shilling, 80 shilling, Harp lager, McEwen's lager, and we did Foster's for a while. All different stuff, but mainly, we did the Cavalier lager, and we did the Excalibur, which was the non-alcoholic. We did all these things.
Yeah.
And we did 1664 as well. We did a lot of things under contract.
Right. And this was all done on the same production
All done
line?
the same production line. We worked 42 fermentation vessels, and they were as high as this building.
That is huge, isn't it?
And you checked it. You checked them every 4 hours. Like you took your thermometer, like psychrometer, and
Yeah.
checked the gravities, and then you could register and tell them when it was ready to put. It's ready to put the coolant on.
Right.
That kind of thing. Or when it came over from the brew house, the yeast would go in and everything would go in, and then you would be able to go to the computer and rouse it to mix it all up.
So even then it was
You did all
computerised?
these things, you know. People think, brewery. But when you tell people what you actually did, apart from getting drunk.
And you must have got used to the smell of it.
Yeah, I stayed when I first started there, I stayed in Crew Crescent, which is along Boswell Parkway. After about a year, maybe 2 years, I could come out, if I was early shift, I could come out the door in the morning and sniff, and I knew what we were making that day.
No, really? Yeah. And were you always in the brewery, or did you get to go out at all?
No, I was there all the time. I started off in Holyrood, which is now Dynamic Air.
Oh, yeah.
I started off there in the keg hall, and I was just 2 shifts there, 62 and 2 to 10, 5 days a week. But up in Fountain Bridge, they had what they called continental shifts.
All right.
That was like whatever shift you were on, 62, 2 to 10, 10 to 6. It was 7 days before you got a day off.
Wow.
And nobody wanted to work these shifts.
No.
So anyway, I didn't realise. So anyway, they were advertising for people, so I put my name down. Went up, got the interview, and the boss says to me, we'll see you on Monday at 2 o'clock. Well, I knew it was got to be shifts anyway. So I did the Monday, 2 to 10, and then he says, okay, we'll see you on Thursday. It's Thursday? Yes, he says, all the shifts here are 7 days long. He says, so when you come back on Thursday, you'll be doing 7 night shifts. And one of them in the middle was a 12-hour shift. So you were actually working something like, before you got a day off, 6 to 8 hours a week. And then you got your time off. You know.
Right, okay.
But we only got a weekend off every 4 weeks.
And how long did you do that?
30 years.
In that shift?
Yeah.
No wonder you didn't want to do shift work thereafter.
Yeah, it was a good job. And they still look at, it's no more, it's Heineken now.
Yeah.
But they still look after us. You know,
Really?
They've still got a great pension, and there's a few perks that you can get, you know.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
But when I was with the brewery itself, they had different things where you could go. They had bought and taken over Centre Parks.
Had they?
It
right.
actually belonged to them. at
Oh,
first.
wow.
So when Robin was young, we could go to Centre Parks for a week, and whatever it cost, if it was £200, you only paid 100.
So Right.
And we could go to their hotels anywhere in the UK, and you get 50% off the bill. Yeah. So it was that kind of place.
That's very good, isn't it?
And then, of course, I got 4 dozen cans of beer a month because my wife worked in the office.
It's quite a lot of beer.
But I gave most of it away,
Yeah.
or I saved it up for Christmas and New Year, and then handed it out. You know, but they did look after us. They even had their own clinic up at Andrew Duncan's for alcoholics.
Oh, really? That's very interesting, because I don't suppose that's well publicised.
Then they had one as well for Newcastle, for the Newcastle brown drinkers, because it was called the Electric Soup. They had a clinic for them as well.
I didn't know that. So, I mean, dozens of jobs you've had.
Oh yeah, I couldn't tell you how many.
No.
A few.
What was your favourite? Was it the brewing?
Well, the brewery, definitely. Well, to be honest, I liked Carney and I loved the trawlers, landing the trawlers.
Did you?
It was a great job and a lot of money. I mean, I was probably the guys that worked there, there was always half a dozen of us. A lot of money was spent on clothes, and then, of course, go out with girls. In fact, I went out with this girl and she said to her pal, you know, I've never had so much money spent on me in my life.
But I'll tell you what we'll do, John. We'll stop there, but you've just perfectly pitched it for the next week.
Yeah.
About going out and all that kind of stuff, and your clothes. That's brilliant.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast with John. You can find more like it on our website, www.livingmemory.org.uk. Until the next time, take care.